Thank you for joining Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, your weekly visit to the crossroads of leadership, communication, and engagement, where we provide captivating conversation while helping you create your compelling company culture. We give meaningful insights on these topics from fascinating interviews with top business leaders, trendsetters in leadership research, and perceptive commentary from your host, myself, Dr. Dave Miles. Today, we are lucky to have Sierra Collins with Sierra Learnership Collaborative as our guest. So welcome, Sierra.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I want to get started with a little bit of could you tell us a little bit about you to our listeners and give us a little bit of your background?
Yes, of course I can. So obviously my name is Sierra Collins. I am the founder of Sierra Learnership Collaborative, where I'm a leadership development coach, speaker, and trainer. I have a little bit of a different background than your typical coach, as I started out in the world of education. So I was very passionate about being an educator from a very young age. And I went to West Virginia University, where I earned my master's in education. And so I ended up going into the school system, the public school system, for 10 years. I did a combination in Fairfax County public schools in Virginia, as well as here in Winchester, Virginia. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time in education. But what I was trying to do the entire time I was there was expand my influence and reach as many people as possible. I felt as if I was limiting myself to one classroom. So I took advantage of different leadership opportunities to try and reach, the entire school, took advantage of the ability to provide professional development for other teacher leaders, and then started providing that at the district level so I could expand my influence as much as possible. My ultimate goal was going to be to move into principalship and potentially become a superintendent. And then I, took a bit of a turn. It was partially related to my health and recommendations by a doctor to reduce my level of stress. So I'm like, why don't I start a business? That's not stressful at all. But then I also felt like I enjoyed working with adults just as much as youth. And I wanted to be able to branch out and help people grow at all ages. And that was really what my passion was helping people grow. So when I started my business back in June of 2020, so we're, almost at a year and a half here, I did it with the idea that I would continue working with youth and providing coaching services that focus on character development and leadership skills, things that I didn't feel like I could really spend as much time on in the classroom because we were so focused on standardized testing and teaching to the test. And then working with the adult side, I became very passionate about business. And it was something I never went to school to study, but I found that I enjoyed working with adults and helping them grow into the positions that they currently held and take them to the next level, whatever that may look like, working with them individually or as a team. So I do something different every day, which is really fun. And it's super rewarding to see the individuals and teams that I'm working with grow and change over time. So I originally got my feet wet with John Maxwell leadership development coaching program. But just as you do as a teacher, you end up pulling from all different resources, the best of everything that you can find. And that's really what I do. So that was kind of my intro into coaching and where I got my initial certification. But I found it was just such a natural transition. The things I was doing in my classroom, I found I was really a coach all along. I was more facilitating learning through asking the right questions and reflection, just as coaches do, rather than being a directive teacher. So it was a natural transition. And now I love what I do and I get to talk to people like you.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, our next question is, what does leadership mean to you and what does good leadership look like?
That's not a loaded question.
Not a loaded question. No,
yeah.
Not at all. But
so are we going to do this once a day for 365 days? Is that?
Well, it's not a calendar. No, I mean, we've got a recording schedule, so we can't, we're not that flexible, but just we have about 10 minutes left in our first segment here. So in that time, if you can, the Reader's Digest version of what leadership means to you, and also what does good leadership look like?
Okay, so what leadership means to me. So obviously I see leadership beginning at a very young age. And I even have middle school coaching clients at this time. So leadership doesn't have to be a title or a position within your career. It's something that I quickly learned from John Maxwell. One of the first things that I learned was leadership is about influence. And if you are influencing people, you are leading people, right? And you have the ability to be a leader. So when I think of leadership, I think of effective leadership having to do with your intentionality, and that intentionality of always seeking to grow yourself and grow others around you. So effective leadership means that every day you get up and you set forth some plan for the day in order to get one step closer to your goals for yourself or for your team. And it means that you are developing other leaders around you so they can continue to influence other leaders. That's how we pass it along. It's just like when you buy someone's coffee in the drive-through and then they feel pressured to buy the one behind them because they feel guilty if they didn't, right? It's the same kind of thing. So when I am continuing to develop the leaders around me, they are going to want to in turn develop others around them. So to me, that's being effective, is just modeling the behaviors you want to see. It means getting on the level of those around you, not being afraid to do the dirty work. I was reading a book recently called Legacy, and it's all about how this team was actually the ones sweeping the floor and sweeping the room after they had just won this championship. They were the ones that were cleaning up after themselves, right? So really getting down on that level and not being afraid to do the dirty work and the hard work, not just being that visionary, but helping to execute as well. So there's so many things that go into effective leadership. So I don't know how to really narrow it down other than intentionality, just being thoughtful in everything that you do, and making sure that you are being the best leader you can be for everyone around you.
Cool. So that I'll go and drill down to the other one, the second half of that question. So intentionality. So we got a good idea what leadership means to you in general, but what does good leadership look like?
Okay, so first of all, good. Let's look at the word good. Okay. I don't know that I want to be a good leader, right? Okay. So I often put effective in front of it, because I feel like good looks very different to different people. But if we talk about effective, I feel like it's more easily measured, if that makes sense. Yeah. So to me, effective leadership, it's partially what I just said about intentionality, but it's also knowing that, and I stated this already, that you are not defined by the title that you have. So it's seeking out people around you that can continue to develop you, and being open to criticism, and knowing that you are not at your best. You always have greater potential than what you believe. So just because you hold this title doesn't mean there's not room for growth. I'll give you a teaching example real quick. Okay. So I always feared when I first started teaching when someone was coming in to do an observation. I was terrified that they were judging me, right? What are they going to think? You know, I've got 25 kids in here and I can't watch all 25, even though we say we have eyes in the back of our head. We can't tell what they're all doing all the time.
You don't actually have eyes in the back of your head?
I don't want to reveal that.
Oh, okay. It's like asking if there's actually a Santa Claus or not.
I was going to say, what if the students are listening to this someday? I don't want to give away my secrets.
Very true.
Let's hope they're listening to this someday.
Yes.
So the reason I bring up this example is I found that I became truly effective when I opened my door and I expected criticism. So those individuals that came in and told me, you are doing a great job. This is, a great learning environment. The kids are engaged. It's just perfect. You did a perfect job. Everybody should come observe you. And it's great. That makes you feel good, right? But it's not the truth. There was always something that they could find, whether it was I was spending more time on, this side of the room than the other, or whatever it may be. There was an individual that wasn't engaged the entire time and I didn't even notice them. The moment that I was open to the criticism and I took the feedback and I used it to grow myself, I became more effective as a leader in my classroom and in my school. And then I, in turn, was able to share that learning with the other educators and say, I know that it is stressful when someone comes into your room and you feel like they're judging you, but this is such a powerful exercise and it is going to lead to growth in your classroom and you are going to bring more value. So I think that that's my example of that. Is just really being an effective leader is open to feedback and willing to change and grow and doesn't get stagnant and believe that because they hold a title, they are at their best.
Nice. Well, like I said, and you're right. It's a big difference between, and I leave it vague on purpose. You talk about, well, good leadership. What do you mean with good leadership? Well, what does it mean to you? So for you, it's effective leadership, because good is very vague, but people use it all the time. Oh, that person is a good leader versus a bad leader. They're a good manager versus a bad manager, good boss versus a bad boss. So since it is such a kind of subjective term, it is good to kind of throw it out there and let people take out of it what they
ask me again tomorrow and I might tell you something completely different, but at the end of the day, I will always replace good with effective. I will do that.
Well, you know what? You could have the best person in the world. I love them to death and they're a wonderful leader and they're so kind. And at the end, if you can't get anything done, but to someone, what good is it? It's like, you talk about leaders, and you can go on for hours and days on leaders versus managers and that kind of business. But for somebody to be effective, I believe you have to have it. Management is a skill set. Yes, you have to be a leader. You have to, be able to cast a vision and pour into people and do different things. There's skills that go with that. But in the end, if you can't effectively manage people, if you can't get tasks done and you can't accomplish anything, you could walk around all day, pie in the sky, casting vision everywhere. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we did X, Y, and Z? Well, if you can't get anybody to move that direction, you're not effective. You might be a great visionary leader, but if you're that person and you have enough money, maybe you ought to hire somebody who's the effective boots on the ground to get things done to push that along for you.
Yeah, I feel like you can be a great people person and everyone will love you, but that doesn't make you an effective leader.
No. It's kind of like even with Microsoft, you have a lot of this where we have the CEO, the one that everybody sees, and then you've got I think it was Ballmer that was behind the scenes for so long. I mean, he ended up becoming the CEO afterwards, but I mean, he was the one grinding away, the CEO that was grinding away and getting things done. The foot to pavement person,
Right.
So to me, that's but if you don't have a good vision on where you're going, you're getting things done, but where are you going? So you got to have that kind of balance in that. So while we wrap up this segment, any other insights on leadership, specifically, not just effective leadership, or it's got to be intentional, but any little nuggets about leadership before we go to the next first break?
My little nugget would be that everybody listening to this, think about who they influence, who in their life they might have an influence on their decisions, their choices, who comes to them for advice, because, I'm sure I'll bring this up in another segment. It's really easy to not think that you're a leader because you don't hold a specific title. And so I would encourage people that are listening to realize that you are a leader right where you are. And what that looks like to each person can be very different. I have come across many clients who have asked me this exact question. It happened twice last week. I'm an introvert, so how can I be a leader? Because individuals think that, leadership looks like standing up in the front of the room and being the center of attention. And they have this vision of what a leader looks like in their mind. And because they're not as outgoing and that is not their cup of tea, that they're suddenly not going to be an effective leader. So that's a question I love exploring with my clients and thinking about, okay, think about your position. Who are you influencing through your position right now?
Yes.
Does it mean that you have to be standing on a stage or having a radio show, or is this how you have to be in order to be an effective leader? And once they start thinking about it, they realize that they do have influence. So that's just kind of a little tidbit that I think people would benefit from hearing. So I would encourage, most people are leaders and they don't even realize it.
Nice. Well, we're going to go ahead and break for this segment, and we'll be back with part 2 on Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. All right, we are back. Segment number 2, Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. Our guest today is Sierra Collins with Sierra Learnership Collaborative. And we just were talking about leadership and influence and how a lot of people don't see themselves as leaders, even though they do influence folks. And I do like to throw out there, whether you're a CEO of a Fortune 50 company or a single mother of 3, everybody influences somebody. And leadership is more of a verb than a title. It's something you do. It's not something you are. Mm-hmm. So with that aspect, I do want to go into our next question, if we can. What was one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
Okay. One goes along with what we were just talking about.
Okay.
That I couldn't even accept that I was a leader because I didn't realize I had influence. So I didn't realize I was a leader as an educator. I didn't see a classroom teacher being a leader in my mind. And it took a while to figure that out for myself. So that's one. But a challenge that I have had is being a young leader. So from the moment, so just to kind of give you an idea, I graduated from high school when I was 16. And so I had my master's and started teaching at 21. And coming into a team environment where I have veteran teachers all around me, but here I am like taking on these leadership roles, becoming team leader, and I'm just this young girl, and what do I know, right? But in my mind, I am so motivated, and I just came out of school, and I have this great education and so many things to share, and I'm so passionate, right? And so kind of trying to find a way to be an effective leader when people initially don't believe in you or don't believe that you know enough to share because of how young you are. So again, with starting my business, how can Sierra help me with leadership development when, she's young, she's in her early 30s, she's not had a business that long. How can she teach me anything, right? And that's something I've had to overcome over the years, is helping people to understand that I bring a very different perspective to the table. So just like working with you, Dave, or collaborating with any other coaches, I love collaborating with other coaches because we all have different backgrounds and bring different perspectives to the client. So though I'm young, I've still learned a lot. I've made plenty of mistakes. Believe me, I've made plenty of mistakes that I can share and help people prevent them from making those mistakes themselves, right? But there's so much value in having a young leader around. And so it was just a challenge to overcome from the beginning. And I think I faced it again when I started over and started my business. It's like, she's been a teacher. How is she now a coach? How does that work? And how is she going to get this business off the ground when she's so young in the industry? How can she coach me on my business when I've been in business longer than her? Right. So I think that was a big challenge.
Gotcha. No, I could certainly understand that. It's when you, especially when you're switching career fields, it is always tough. And I laugh when you were talking about coming out of school at 16 and finishing the master's at 21. And I mean, you're gung ho ready to go with a master's degree. And all of a sudden, a lot of these veteran teachers are looking at you like, I've been doing this longer than you've been on God's green earth.
Yes,
And
literally.
So in some ways, that's good because they've got a lot of experience. But as we know, experience, kind of like good leadership, experience is a relative term. I mean, you always have to ask if you've been doing this for 20 or 30 years, especially when you lead with that comment. Well, I've been doing this for 30 years. Have you been doing
it the same way for
right,
30
years? I was
years?
Say, do you have 30 years experience, or do you have 1 year experience that you've rinsed and repeated 30 different times?
Yeah. That was the exciting part, though, being able to bring new ideas to the table and help them to see that just because it had worked one way for so long doesn't mean it was the best way. Let's break it and fix it again a couple times because it kept getting better. And then there was that technology piece. That was always funny too, because they're like, she's using technology in the classroom and I don't know about this. Let's just stick to the pencil and paper. So yeah, it definitely allowed me to bring in new ideas.
Nice. God forbid in the 21st century, you would want to use technology in a classroom. That would be ridiculous.
Hey, there is a healthy balance. There's a healthy balance. You can rely on it too much in the classroom. So I tried to think that I had a happy medium there.
Good. I have seen that. I have seen where it's so much of it that it's like, okay, well, when are we getting to some real teaching? You almost get lost in the technology.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Are we using the tool just to use it? Or are we using it because it's actually improving the lesson, right?
Well, you're using it because your principal said so, because he just spent 10 grand on a bunch of smart boards that aren't getting used. That's why you're using it.
Yeah. Okay.
I said that with my outdoor voice. Dag on it. So the next question, what do you see as one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make today?
It's going to go back to my passion over and over again. So since I'm all about growth, it's the leaders that don't invest enough time, money, or effort into continued growth on all levels. So growing themselves and growing their leaders, focusing on their team and their team culture. That's the foundation of successful leaders is building this great team culture. And I see so many businesses that I've worked with, they are doing great things and they're making a difference in people's lives. But when they're trying to figure out what's keeping them from going to the next level, their team isn't working cohesively, right? They're not all moving in the same direction. They don't all have a common understanding of the mission and vision that they're supposed to be working towards every day, right? So if leaders are not taking the time and investing the money into growing and providing professional development for everyone involved, that to me is the biggest mistake. I'm sure you see the same thing with a lot of the clients that you've worked with as well. So when they come to you, sometimes when they finally come to you, it's like, whoa, you should have come to me a long time ago, because now we have a very toxic environment and we have a lot more to fix than if you had come to me, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Also, when you talk about the growth and development, I mean, I think a lot of folks are like, well, I can't afford to, they're running so fast. They're trying to get so many things done. They can't stop and take the time to do that. Or like I said, short-sighted to the point where like, okay, well, I don't see where that's going to help me right now. And like I said, by the time that they do see it, it's probably significantly too late.
Yeah, so this leads me to another thought. So obviously, in order to have that continued growth and to get to the point where you're seeking the help that you need, you have to reflect, right? And so taking the time for reflection has always been huge for me. For a long time, I had a really big commute, so reflection was really easy before and after work, right? But I say this a lot. There's working on your business and working in your business. And sometimes we fill our time so much working in our business and working with people. and we don't spend enough time pulling back and looking at what can I do to be more intentional. I'm going to pull out the word intentional again, intentional about my growth in my vision and where we're headed. If you're not stopping and doing that, it's easy to get lost along the way and just be living day to day, just trying to keep your head above water, right? So I know for me, I recently sat down, and my dad would be so proud of this because he taught me this at a young age. And he jokes about it all the time, because when I'm like, well, I used it with a client today, I think it makes him feel pretty good. But the idea of a 24-hour plan and realizing no matter what, there's 24 hours in every day, no more, no less. So if you start with 24 at the top of the page and you subtract however much time you spend sleeping, eating, cleaning up after meals, personal hygiene, and so on, you subtract everything to do with yourself first and see what's left for work, right? And then think about, how am I going to use, say it magically leaves you 8 hours for work, right? You still have to break down that time and think about, how much time am I incorporating for reflection and continued growth and development? Your business and my business is all about growing everyone else. But if I don't stop and continue my own growth, I'm not going to be able to keep adding value to my clients. So I have 2 hours a day that I set aside specifically for my own growth so that I can better provide to my clients. So I think it's all about investing the right amount of time and money and effort into yourself and your people.
Nice. I do laugh that when you're looking at different folks, and I'm going to use the term referral extraordinarily loosely, because I know for you being in some lead share groups before and having exposure to BNI and a lot of different places, there's a true definition of referral that this does not meet, right? But people are like, oh, you need to anything in the leadership realm, right? It doesn't matter what it is. You need to talk to so-and-so. So basically they think of the worst person that they know that's a manager, leader, worst people person they know. And they're like, oh, you need to go talk to Jim. You need to go talk to Sue. It's like, one, that's really not a referral. So wrong answer. And two, the people that need it the most are typically the ones that aren't going to be standing in line to get that, unless it's just to the point where it's like, oh my God, this is the Hail Mary. This is the last ditch effort before we go out of business. And then at that point, like you said, it's almost too late. But I do laugh that people that are going to more likely to invest in that are people that are already, that know the value of it, that are already succeeding, that are already good companies. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's what we've kind of found. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that what I find is most of my referrals come from clients who've already experienced coaching with me and know how much progress they made during that time. And so it has to come from someone who is able to provide a testimonial on how much coaching helps, because we know that coaching is a term that's overused. People wake up one morning and decide they're going to be a coach, and maybe they haven't even had a certification or training of any sorts. And it's just a very broad term. So some people have had very negative experiences with coaching. So there are a lot of reasons why individuals wouldn't just go out on their own to seek this. So it really takes those who have had great experiences sharing that with others to get the people who need it most to you, right? Or people listening to this saying, okay, I finally reached a point where I realized, and that COVID has done this for a lot of people, that they have pulled back and realized they're not using their time as effectively as they could, or they're not happy in their position and they need to do something to make sure their position aligns with, their, communication style and their ideal environment and so on. So there's some misalignment somewhere along the way. And it took this for them to realize, right? So some sort of little kick in the bottom that helps them to see how much they need it. And as soon as they get a taste of it and they realize how helpful it is, usually they're hooked, right? So I find that, but I know exactly what you're talking about because I hear it all the time. You need to work with so-and-so. And I'm like, well, maybe you should let them know that, because it's not going to sound very good if I call them and say, hey, your best friend says that, like, life stinks right now.
Yeah.
So how can I
Yeah,
help?
your buddy dimed you out and says you're a really horrible leader
You're
and
a
you need some
horrible
help.
leader.
Right. You need some help. So I'm just calling because so-and-so dimed you out and said I needed to call you.
Or their boss, right? I'm just calling to let you know my boss really stinks and they probably need your services.
Right. Like, no, I'll take an introductory email and a conversation with the boss, but just the, hey, I have a horrible boss and you need to go work with them doesn't quite cut it. So we got a couple more questions for our next segment, and we will be back in just a moment on Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We're here with Sierra Collins of Sierra Learnership Collaborative, and we are getting to our last couple of questions. And this one is an interesting one I always think is good. What do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
I like it. All right. So I would say surrounding yourself with those whose leadership you admire most. So it's all about who you're surrounding yourself with. We always hear people say you should never be the smartest one in the room, right? Or you're in the wrong room.
Right.
So really putting yourself in situations where you're around other leaders who have qualities that you look up to, who are great role models for you, and making sure that, you know, we talk about that, you know, you are really the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you stop and think right now about who you spend the most time with, hopefully there are people that you would like to be more like, not ones that bring negativity into your life or cause you to be more stagnant and not grow. I want people who push me and hold me accountable. So I think that it's just so important to have those people in your life and being thoughtful about, you know, who you surround yourself with.
Good deal. What would you recommend folks to, if they realize one day, hey, I am the smartest person in the room, and this is saying this in a good way. They're like, hey, I've surrounded myself with a whole lot of people that, you know, it makes me feel better because I might be more experienced than them. I'll be smarter than them, so to speak. But it doesn't help you grow and develop. What would you recommend people do to change their room?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, in the first place, and I had this conversation yesterday, the difference between coaching and mentoring, right? And so thinking about being a mentor for someone, you think of yourself as being very knowledgeable in that area and being able to provide background of your own experience and provide advice, right? Whereas coaching someone, you're an expert on your life. I'll never know your life better than you. And I'm going to ask questions that help you to discover for yourself what to do next, right? So there's the difference between the two. Well, I find that if you become the quote unquote smartest person in the room, then you should become a mentor to some people in that room or to a person in that room. Don't just end the relationship, right? You are influencing them. This is exactly what we're talking about, Dave. So you've become the smartest person in the room, and then you run out of the room, and who are they going to look up to, right? So you have to continue to mentor them and pour into them. We talk about being a river, not a reservoir. So we're not going to hold it all for ourselves and not continue to allow it to flow into others. But at the same time, it just depends on how you network and who your network is, and what your goals are. So I will always say it's great for every single person to have a coach. I'm a coach and I have 2 coaches, right? So I think sitting down and being thoughtful with someone else and thinking about what am I trying to accomplish by surrounding myself with these people, to figure out who you want to be around, right? So am I trying to move to the next level in my position? Am I trying to make a shift in what industry I'm even in? Do I need to start looking ahead and surrounding myself with people who have been successful in that industry before I make the switch? And just being thoughtful about aligning the people with your goals. Now, Yes, I am a proud member of the Top of Virginia Regional Chamber. I'm a member of Nexco National. I'm all about networking. And the best way to find these people to connect with, in my mind, is spending time immersed in these groups of professionals who seek out the organization specifically to make connections and grow themselves. So I reach out to my contacts and constantly, who do you know that I should know? Right. That's one of my favorite questions. I like asking people, what are you reading right now? And then I add it to my Amazon cart. And then I ask them, who do you know that I should know? And by doing that, you come across some really amazing people who want to be your mentor and then take you under their wing and help lift you up. So I think that's kind of how I found those people for me. I was at one point surrounded by a ton of negativity in my life and a ton of people who had a very fixed mindset. So it's so important to be surrounded by people who have a growth mindset. You can only spend so much time and energy trying to pour into those who have a fixed mindset, because they suck the life right out of you sometimes, right? So I always say I like to work with people who want to grow. If you're talking about someone who's not at a point where they want to grow or are ready to grow, those aren't my kind of people yet, right? They have some other work to do first. But to go back to your question, Dave, I would say find a local networking group or start asking people those questions. Who do you know that I need to know? And build relationships with people in your industry or people in a position that you want to make your way up to at some point.
Nice. That's nice. Because you're right. You have to be able to not just mentor the folks that, like you said, you're leaving, but if you can't find the people that are around to be able to get, like I said, find a better room, find folks that are smarter than you, find folks that, that makes it tough when, and I think a lot of folks may be in that position. They feel like, well, I've surrounded myself, good, bad, or indifferent, with the people that I'm around, and I don't know how to go about doing that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to kind of throw that out there. So networking groups, chambers of commerce, different places like that you can reach out and get introductions. One of the things when you talked about chambers specifically is, I thought is sitting down, making an appointment maybe with the chamber executive or the membership director or somebody that's influential in the chamber, because most of the time they know everybody. They know all the members. They all roll through their office at some point. And with them getting a better understanding of what you do, no matter what profession that you're in, they would probably be very good to be able to connect you with the right people, even if you didn't want, even if you weren't necessarily trying to do this at random. Well, let me go to a networking event and maybe I will run into the person that I need to. I would say take it one step further and really work with your chamber exec or membership director or program director, whatever, the right person in the chamber that you're involved with. And if you own a business, it would behoove you to join the chamber, just being honest. And if it's, I think a lot of folks is financial end of it, well, especially really small businesses. Do I want to put X number of dollars in? Ask your chamber. A lot of times they'll let you space that out over 12 months. And so from a cash flow perspective, I could be some of the best marketing money you ever have, but building that relationship with the chamber staff, since they know the players in the community, getting them to make some strategic introductions for you. And also, I think be willing to give back to the chamber and really help them out, because I think the more that you can pour into them and help them out, and they see you as a person of value, somebody that's helping them, they'll be more likely to want to reciprocate and be able to help you out and make some introductions for you. So it's not just all, take, to some degree, there's only but a certain limit on that, no matter how high the dues are for that chamber. There's only but so much, when they start seeing the word across your forehead that says needy, right? Then they're like, ooh, time to run when they see you coming. So good balance. But I think the more you pour into helping them with certain things that, they're looking for, whether it's committees or there's always things going on that you can, throw a couple hours in to help out with, that would be extraordinarily beneficial for them. and then leverage that for some.
Yeah. When thinking about, the return on investment, and I talk about this all the time with my Nexco people, at the end of the day, you are going to get more out of your experience in a networking organization the more you give, right?
Yes.
The more you give, and every call I get on, who do I know that you should know, Dave? I'm going to introduce you to them, and I focus on you. It ends up coming back to you in the long run. So yeah, you're exactly right. In pouring into the chamber or whatever organization, it'll come back to you. It'll be worth it.
Cool. All right. $60,000 stupid question of the day.
Okay.
We've got a lot of listeners, especially in the UK, may not be familiar. I know most people, not everybody, but most people are familiar with BNI, Business Networking International. Dr. Ivan Meisner started it, so on and so forth. For those who are not familiar, briefly, what is Nexco? You mentioned it a couple times, and people are like, what is that? I don't know.
Okay.
So,
right.
So not a huge ad, but what exactly is that?
Okay, Nexco National is a networking organization that focuses on community collaboration and growth, which are right up my alley.
You only named your company after that, right? Really?
That's right. So really, it's split into two segments. They have specific B2B chapters, and then what we call core chapters, which is B2C. It might have a mix of people, but what I think really stands out is we provide professional development conversations, mastermind groups right in our chapter meetings. They're all 100% virtual, which allows us to also collaborate across chapters. And I visit chapters all over the place from the comfort of my own office without traveling out over the mountain and back. So growing all the time. We actually have a national chapter. So we even have folks all the way out in California. So it started right around DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Okay.
And we're expanding quickly. Next year, we're planning on building out at least 8 more chapters. I'm actually the vice president of member experience. So I'm all about bringing in people and giving them the best experience. And then I have my own chapter I'm vice president of here in Winchester, Virginia. So Nexco, Nexco national.com. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to have you as a guest for my chapter because you can attend from anywhere.
Very cool.
And make great connections. It is wonderful. I literally did a new member orientation yesterday, and I was limited to talking about Nexco for an hour, and I immediately wrote the CFO back after the call and said, I think we're going to need to increase that to at least an hour and a half. I can't sum it up.
That's funny. And for those who, is it just a real 30-second compare and contrast with organizations like BNI or chapter or chamber lead shares, stuff like that, just different, similarities, differences.
Yeah. So to me, one, it's that culture that we have where we vet everyone that comes in. It's about quality of members, not quantity. We're not filling a seat to fill a seat. We wait for the right person that fits into our Nexco family. We have a list of fundamental behaviors and core values that we expect our members to follow. Very, very great professionals. Everyone is a leader in Nexco. Something else that stands out to me is the ability to do cross-chapter collaboration. There are plenty of groups out there where you are limited to, if you're a member of this networking group, we don't want you going to other lead shares. You can do whatever you want. You are not held back. You can network within all of the other chapters. There's Nexco National organizational events. We have social events, lunch and learns, tons of that. But then it's only twice a month rather than weekly. And it's an hour and a half meeting that will absolutely fly by. It will be the best hour and a half of that week. I'm not just saying that because I lead the meeting. It's structured very well to move quickly, allows icebreakers, breakout sessions, just really meaningful collaboration.
Cool, because a lot of people I think are familiar with the structure of BNI. I used to be a member a long time ago when I was in a different industry. And so like I said, for the industry I was in, it worked fantastic. And so,
Yeah.
so like I said, and you're right, it's the right group of people, no matter what, whether it's a chamber lead share, whether it's a B2C, B2B, whether it's Nexco, whether it's BNI. I really, truly believe if you're in the right one specifically for lead share,
Yeah.
then it can be fantastic and well worth the time invested. But if you're not, it could certainly be, and you have to evaluate that for yourself. That
Yeah.
is this going to be a time drain?
Yeah.
I've been
It's,
involved in a few that just were not the right mix. And I've been in some that were extraordinarily fantastic for everybody, being able to hand leads off to everybody and really help everybody grow their business. So that's pretty cool. I just wanted
yeah.
to I wanted to ask that. Now, our last question is we have 2 minutes left, and we want to throw that over to you. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can get what some things you have going on. Tell us how we can connect with you.
Okay, so first, of course, go to my website at www.sierralearnership.com. I can't believe, Dave, that you did not ask me why I use the term learnership, not leadership. But you now
have the chance to tell everybody.
So I believe in order to be successful, you need to be a lifelong learner as well as have effective leadership skills. So I really brought about that term learnership for my business because I work with lifelong learners. I have people who've been in business 30 years and still want to grow and learn. I have little old ladies walking into my mastermind groups with a cane, just wanting to learn every little tidbit that they can, right? So it doesn't matter. It's about lifelong learning and it's about continuous growth and then those leadership skills. So yeah, learnership is my thing. You can follow me on social media for any updates that I may have on upcoming events. I have been spending a lot more time with business clients. And so what I'm trying to do with the remainder of my time is I'm providing a lot of workshop type environments for people. So for example, next week, I'm doing a 4-hour workshop on using DISC as a tool to close deals. So knowing about the client that you are trying to build a relationship and knowing their communication style and how do you close a deal with a D? How do you close a deal with a SI, whatever it may be, and talking about being able to identify those characteristics in yourself and others to more effectively communicate. So I love doing workshops right now. I have a lot of individual and team clients. So this allows me to build things out and do, 1 day, 2 day, once a month type workshops and get to know some new clients and help their teams and individuals. So I don't have any specific upcoming mastermind groups to talk about right now. I kind of start forming them as they come up in people's requests. Like I notice a trend where several people would find value in this mastermind topic. So I start a group and then I invite everyone that I notice needs it, right?
Gotcha.
So
good deal. Well, go to SierraLearnershipCollaborative.com to check out all of Sierra's goodness that she has online. She can find out all about her business. Like I said, follow her on social media. And as always, I always like to talk about a little bit of a gift that we give to all our listeners at the end. Basic communication assessment, as Sierra was talking about, just something to find out your primary communication style, how best to communicate with others that are not like you, and maybe some remote tips on working remotely if that's still something that you do. Text COL for Conversations on Leadership. Text COL to 540-900-0450. So text COL to 540-900-0450. Get a copy of that assessment. Also, some info on gaining insights into your team, because as Sierra said, that is very important to find out about communication styles to be able to interact with your team. So thank you so much, Sierra, for joining us on Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave.